Welcome to another episode. What are you reading? What are you writing? A weekly video podcast features creatives, writers, and readers, and we come together to talk about books. I am your host, Karen E. Osborne, author of 4 novels and counting. I am so glad you're here. I think you're going to enjoy our next guest. Am so glad that you chose to join us today.
Okay.
Hi, you have I have such an interesting uh, author to introduce you to today, and his
All right.
name is Preston Allen Gale. And he's a professor, he tells me. He has students, he teaches, and he has, let me just tell you just a little bit about him, and then he'll tell you all about himself, right?
Okay.
So his new novel, I Disappeared Them, isn't that a title? Is described as a serial killer's desire to protect children fuel fuels a parallel drive to murder other sadistic men in this immersive and literary psychological thriller. Wow, right? He is the recipient of the State of Florida Individual Artist Fellowship in Fiction and the winner of the Sonia H. Stone Prize in Literature. He is author of the short story collection Church Boys and Other Sinners. I love your titles. And the novels All or Nothing, Jesus Boy, and Every Boy Should Have a Man. Welcome, welcome, Preston.
Well, thank you for having me on.
I'm
Um,
delighted to have you. So it's very hard to know where to begin because this is you do so
right.
many things that are so
Right.
interesting. And all I thought maybe we could start with talking about the darkness
Okay.
of your novels. And
All
I
right.
they just all feel like they come
Yeah.
from a dark place. So just tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that.
Well, I am. Um, I like to think of myself as a keen observer of humans, human nature, and so on. And I believe that the best stories come out of, like you said, darkness somewhere. Um, Real quick, the first novel, All or Nothing, is about a gambler. Can't get any darker than that. Who, he loves gambling and he destroys his family, but he's an unrepentant degenerate. The second novel that you mentioned, I have some self-published books before that, but uh, you know, the second novel is Jesus Boy. And here we have, how do you make something like Jesus Boy dark? Well, um, the hero loves the Lord, loves the piano, and he loves Sister Morrison, the widow of the former deacon. He's 16, she's 42. You get it. And a lot of darkness occurs in that book, but also joy and the question of who we are, um, as men and women who live under certain strictures. Every boy should have a man. Um, is about a boy who finds a little man, not a small person, but literally a human that they use, he and his family and his neighbors and his friends and his community. If they find them, they eat them or they use them as pets. Some men are talking men, so they can help with that. Other men are music men. Other men are seeing men, so you use them like you use a sightseeing dog. That's basically the premise of that book. And it comes from a dark place. But also, as a dark person, I like humor. And I've recently written an essay about why humor is so important in books that are pretty dark because they relieve tension
Mhm.
and give you some comic relief. This book is about a literal serial killer. You've seen the TV series Dexter, I'm sure. It's kind of like that, except we spend a lot more time with him as a child. And several reviewers have said they found themselves, as they read the book, in a disgusting position. They're rooting for him to win.
Mm.
And I'm like, yeah, I did it. They got my message. We are all human. I'm not going to make a serial killer my protagonist if I'm not going to challenge you to love him but hate his deeds. Once I read that, I said, yes, I've achieved it. This is what I wanted. So yeah, that's where my writing comes from. I'm observing humans, watching their behavior. So I make them small, others are giants. I make them put these situations where they're addicted to gambling or they're addicted to God. But outside of that, one loves his family, the other one loves Sister Morrison, even though their love is, you see, that's the kind of thing I do. And of course, with serial killer, I've got like 3 other serial killer books that I plan to bring out, and I hope to hit them, bring them with a lot of darkness, a lot of murder, but also I dare you to despise the hero as you're reading the book. I hope you will love him and then chastise yourself. Why am I loving a guy so
So
horrible?
let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
So the hero of I Disappeared Them, the serial killer,
Mm-hmm.
what tell us what are some of his really fine qualities? What is it that you really what do you love about that hero?
Well, they say that serial killers are sociopaths and they have no feelings. So I challenged that. I gave mine feelings. I made him a good friend to someone. I made him fall in love with a nice girl. He got another girl pregnant, married her, or so he calls it. They just live together, but he calls her his wife. And then, of course, he begins to love her. She took him away from his true love, but now he loves her and he's good with his children. He's a good daddy. But when he sees, when you push his hot button, you're going down. So yeah, there are a lot of qualities about him. He's cynical, he's funny in places, but then the darkness is there. And so I try to throw both those things at you and then have you rooting for him and despising yourself for doing it. But you're not going to despise him. You're just, why do
You're
I
just
love
gonna
him
be
so much?
ashamed of yourself.
Why do I love him? Why do people love Dexter? This is, you got to ask yourself that because he's got these qualities. Everybody says Dexter is a sociopath. He has no redeeming qualities. And yet, when he's trying to hide the sociopath, because psychopaths and sociopaths are good at living among us, right? So they have to wear a disguise. But he's so convincing, we forget that that's only a disguise, right? We
Ah, so
forget
let
that what you're seeing is actually a puppet with his hand in it, but the real him is behind the camera and behind the mask. But so
so
that's
let
why
me
we
ask
love
you
him.
about that. Let me
Uh-huh.
just ask you about that then. So is he really um a good father? Is he really a good husband, or is
Yes.
that the mask?
Well, if you look at it, he's a good husband because he takes care of his family. He wants to make sure his kids go to not to school, make sure they have the enough sleep at night. When his wife gets angry and she disciplines them with her hand, he comes to their rescue. Don't do that. They're children. Children are precious. Um, because I grew up with no brothers and sisters, so I feel for them, and you must take care of them. That's why he knocks off people who hurt children. So it, I tried to make it not so much a mask like Dexter, that is
Mhm.
actually, this is who he is. And that person wears the mask of the serial killer, but underneath the serial killer, there's this good person. Dexter wears the mask as a good person, and underneath, he's a serial killer. And my guy wears his public face. I'm I'm getting a little confused here. Maybe he is like Dexter, but Dexter's not a good person underneath the mask. My person is good beneath the mask. You see? So you see all these bodies lining up in Miami, and you think, wow, who's doing this? We should be able to recognize him, but you can't. He's the guy who delivers. You can't see my T-shirt, but it's a pizza T-shirt. It's like he knocks on your door. Can you see it? How do I stand?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna put. Okay. Um, I don't know what's wrong with my camera, but I'm
All right.
wearing a T-shirt because I expected it to show up on screen, but it's not.
Yeah. So anyway,
So
what's on the t-shirt?
it's a slice of pizza with
Mm-hmm.
the pepperonis bleeding like they're blood. So he's a pizza man. He knocks on your door, and then if you're a nice person, you get a pizza, you give him a tip. If you're not nice, you'll wind up somewhere in the Everglades in a body
You're
bag.
done for. You're
You,
done for. Oh my goodness.
let me give you an example. I don't want to spoil the book for
Yeah,
anyone,
don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
but his first victim, it's curious as to why he killed him. But near the end, he says, when you open the door to a pizza man, it's like a combination movie, right? Versus those slides we used in high in elementary school with the screen, the next thing. It's a combination of that, but more like the slide. Because when the pizza man opens your door, he gets to see your life. And if you're a regular person who orders a lot, he sees scene after scene after scene.
Mm,
And this person had a pregnant wife, and every time he came to the door, she was bandaged. And
mm,
finally, she was not pregnant anymore, and
mm.
she apparently, since she's hobbled now and fixing the table, but she's wearing a leg brace and uh, her arms in a cast. See, um,
Yeah.
so
So he
he knew what.
disappears bad people. He,
Yes, yes,
yes, yes. So you mentioned earlier in the conversation that you had at least three more
yeah,
books. So
yeah.
don't tell us the whole three, but give us a sense of whatever it is you're working on now.
um, well, this one is a guy who, once again, I'm going to force you to love him. But here's his thing: when he kills you, he's calling him. I can't figure out what the newspapers are going to call him, but he calls himself the garbage man, because what he's going to hit, his trophies are going to be fingernail clippings or the lint in your pocket, or you began an essay, he walked into your office and killed you, then he takes not the essay but the rough drafts that you've thrown in the garbage. He takes things that you've thrown away.
Mm,
So the cops aren't going to be looking for missing fingernails and missing lint and coffee cups, that are no longer, or what you were working on. They'll see what you're working on, but they don't realize that you took the draft, the crumpled up draft that you threw away from the garbage can. And I'm not going to say what happened when they finally catch him, but anyway, yeah, that's
this
who
book
I'm
almost
working.
finished.
I'm like halfway through. But
Cool.
yeah, so that's my next one.
Cool beans. That is
Yeah.
exciting. So our show is called What Are You Reading? What Are You
Uh-huh.
Writing? And I'm
Okay.
very curious about what books that you have read that have had a real impact on your writing
Yeah.
style or your writing
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Well, I cut my teeth on Mac Bolan in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, a series of books about a person called dubbed the Executioner.
Mm,
His thing, he had come back from Vietnam and his wife and family were killed by the mob. So he hunts them down and he kills them with no I think there was like one gangster that he didn't really kill. He had him, but he and the gangster talked about getting out of the life, you know. And he said, "Okay, you better do that because I'll be back if you're not." And dead bodies all around you. You have no weapon, and a guy tells you that, you're like, "Phew, okay." Yeah. So Mac Bolan, um, Stephen King, of course, um, and everybody says that he's the king of horror. But he's a very, very good writer. And I remember reading Christine, the one about the talking car. Is that what that was? The one that, no, not talking, but the car, the 57 Chevy that committed, murders and horrible acts like that. And the story of the crazy car, the ghost car, was not to me as important as that of the protagonist, who was a young, pimply faced kid who was bullied, who was an outsider, not violent at all, right? Had good friends who were trying to protect him, tell him to stand up for yourself. I remember that character. That's what stuck with me. And my roommates would say, "Oh, I read it was horrible," right? Ding, ding, ding. I said, "Not this one, not really. Oh, the car's a ghost, I guess." And that's the first book I read of Stephen King, and I fell in love. And since then, I've read like 20 of his books and his short stories. In fact, right now, I'm reading a good one. A little plug for Stephen King.
yeah.
His new collection of stories is called "You Like It Dark" or "You Like It Darker," or you want see, it's something like that. I should have
Mm.
written it down. Um, but that story those stories are amazing. I'm halfway through and I've yet to find one of the stories that's kind of like a clunker. Wow, this guy can write.
Can
Um,
write. He
yeah,
really can write. Just
yeah,
reading his works is a school itself, right?
yes,
Is a
yes.
is a wonderful way to learn. So to say, you are very fun to talk to. This has been this has been very, very interesting. How can our audience find you? Where can they find you? Where can they find your books? Can they be in touch with you?
Well, you can contact me if you go to my Facebook page, or I'll give out my email because, hey, it's what I do. Um, Preston, my first name, like THE, writer, Allen, my last name. So Preston, the writer, Allen at
Hmm,
gmail.com. So Preston,
excellent.
the writer, Allen. And if you email me, I am willing to talk to you forever, like I am. This is my personality. I can't shut up. That's what makes me a good writer. Yeah, so
And your
they can
Facebook
contact me.
page
Uh-huh.
and your Facebook page, is that Preston Allen, the dash
There's
author
no
or
Gale. There's no Gale. Just Preston L. Allen. You can find me on Facebook like that. I forgot what else you were asking. You were saying something else. I
I was
cut you
really
off.
asking how they could find you on Facebook. What name is it? So it's Preston
Preston
L.
Allen.
Allen,
Yeah.
and then does it say author after it, or it's just
No, that's my email address, but you can find my
excellent?
Facebook page. Yeah.
Excellent.
And I also have a website
Oh, yes.
called The Pizza Man's Wife at blogspot.com. Pizza Man's Wife. The website is about this book. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Excellent. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this conversation with Preston as much as I have, both horrified and amused and intrigued and engaged. And I hope you've had the same reaction. Thank you so much for being with us today. And
Thank
I
you.
hope that we will see you next week on What Are You Reading? What are you writing? Have a great, great week, everybody. Bye bye.